Guys, how are you? Welcome to the Backyard Professor Live Yusupov chess lessons, where we are going to learn chess from one of the greatest chess players to ever grace our lowly orb. Hey, Belaglavi, how you doing? Good to see you, my friend. Good to see all of you. So, this Yusupov guy, I mean, when you look at him, he doesn't look so significant. I probably shouldn't put it that way. If he ever watches these, I love his chess. He's the kind of guy you'd love to hang out with, isn't he? Got long hair, great big fabulous beard. When I retire, I'll start looking like that a little bit, maybe. Who knows? Grow my hair just long enough to hide my face and I'll be fine. Hey, username, how are you? Good to see you. So I got looking through these texts, right? This chess course. And there is so much cool stuff that I'm actually going to go back just a little bit and not replay, but show some more examples from the mating motifs. And then we'll get on to the, I think we've covered the idea of at least touched on the idea of the bishops on the long diagonals, which is really important. Hey guys, S. Parker, good to see you. Big Daddy story time. How are you? So what I want to do is this position here. Let me see who this is. Okay, this is LeBron and Buizes. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Buizes. This was in Hanover, 1983. This is on the theme of this is the first beginning book here. I'll go beginning, intermediate, advanced. This is on the theme of the mating attacks, the mating nets, if you will. So he calls this the mate along open lines. So when we look at this, white really does have the dominating fact with the rooks, doesn't he? He's on the G file. He's on the F file. He's got this, what they call, hang on, let me get this book real quick. I'll show you. It's one of the cool little chess books that I've got that I think is one of the sweetest. I get a lot of my little miniature chess games from this one. This is by Victor Karushin, The Tactician's Handbook, Alekin's Block. And the theme with the Alekin block is to put, and it doesn't matter, you can do it with bishops, rooks, knights, even the queen, even pawns, even the king, even in an end game. You stick your piece up on F6, G6, or H6. And the idea is to cramp your opponent. Even if the piece is threatened, that block, what that does, in theory, is it prevents black from advancing his pawns, gaining more space with which to mobilize his bishops or knights, or especially his rooks, because rooks only can go on the file and the row. Yeah. So by blocking in that pawn there, it really cramps black and it makes it so black cannot function defensively as well. So we're seeing white put the block on. We're also seeing him on the G file here, heading straight for the king. So this idea of the mate along open lines, the queen is dominating the center. Now, it's not that black doesn't have an open file. He owns the E file, right? So this is pretty nip and tuck. It's pretty close to a back rank checkmate if you're not real careful. Technically not, because you got the bishop to block and then the rook back and the rook back. So, but that E file you want to keep aware of. The files, one's a partial, the G is a partial, but the F with that Alekin block gives white the better position at this point. So it is white's move, and he brings the theme that we talked about last week, that Artur Yusupov talked about, and I showed you, is the closer you can put your pieces to your opponent's king, the more possibility of good tactics, the better possibility of a maneuvering attack. And really, truly, we need to mentally get used to the idea that in the process of attacking the opponent king, you're willing to sacrifice pieces. If the end result is a checkmate, even the sacrifice of a queen and 2 rooks occur in order to coordinate, because you've got more space. That gives you the better ability to coordinate your pieces, even by coordinating the bishops and the knights. I know there are games out there. If I find one, I'll keep it and show you. But where the queen and both rooks are sacrificed. I mean, all of the heavy pieces. It's a total blowout to open up the king to get to the king. So that is usually a theme here. Yeah? And here we go. Queen takes the h6. The sacrifice. What that does is it eliminates part of the cover. It also deflects a defensive piece onto a lesser usable square, so that also, you got rid of the pawn, but it also does open up the bishop in a different way as the bishop retakes. Sacrifice of the queen. Very nice. And now, rook takes. Checkmate. And that's kind of a basic ladder checkmate. I told you that G file is very powerful. In the process of sacrificing the queen to open up, taking the pawn, moving the bishop over, and then being able to take the bishop also, he owns the H and the G files. And that's a checkmate. Because this rook is in front of the queen. That's nice. That's kind of cool to see that. So that's one mating motif on open lines. It gives us the look of the power of the rooks in really good ways. All righty. Yes, thank you, Juicer. That's correct, because, and he mentions that quick variation here. I didn't do it because this is the disadvantage of using the big board as opposed to electronics. But thank you for pointing that out. Very good. Very good. That's wonderful. Now let me set up this next one. That is also really fun to see how. Get that guy out of the way. And the queens are already off the board. We've got a bishop up. The pawns are back here. We got 3 pawns on this side with the C pawn pushed forward. Got a knight in front of the rook here. Knight bishop connected F. Very good. In this next one, it's going to be a somewhat interesting way to utilize the bishops. That's always fun to see because bishops are so powerful on an open board. And this is one of the main themes of the bishops on the open board. Rook and pawns, the good pawns. Hold on, I'll double check my setup real quick. Okay, so in this particular position, and I do believe this is one of the Yusupov examples. Oh, no, it's not. This is Carlson and Rogard. I've got several Yusupov samples coming up. So this is Carlson and Rogard, sorry. And this is the famous, and to help us get used to the idea of different mating patterns, he shows us several different examples. This is going to be the very famous Bowden's mate. Can you potentially see it? It's really kind of cool how this works. Here's the deal. The activity of the white bishops is stronger. And once again, the Bowden's, now see this Bowden's checkmate, this tactic of the Bowden's checkmate shows up because white's pieces are more active than black's. Meaning, activity, piece activity is your pieces are closer to the opponent and their range is farther. Yes? And you've got this partial C file. So the theme behind the Bowden's mate is to checkmate with both bishops. That's the power of the bishops, and it's on a relatively open board. Notice that. This is why these bishops are so crushingly powerful against a queenside castling of black. The move is a sacrifice of the rook. And you go, wow, that's bold. Yes, it is. It is very bold. And then B takes, and what that does is it deflects this covering pawn from the king. See, the king wasn't that open. Technically speaking, he's really not totally open again, and yet he is, because there's your checkmate. The Bowden crisscross checkmate with the two bishops on an open board, that's powerful stuff. That's a good checkmating pattern to always try to keep in mind if you can. Where'd my pen go? I wanted to mark this off. Here we go. Okay, let me mark these two off that I've got them done so I don't repeat them in later lessons. I think what I'll do is I'll share a few more of those checkmating patterns as we go through this course. In his intermediate, and this is really good too. I think I have something here I want to read. In this intermediate lesson, in this intermediate book, in the chapter, what we're going to look at now, those are a couple of quick checkmate patterns. What we want to understand is pawn weaknesses. And here's the overarching philosophy, and his examples show this, that we'll see here in just a few minutes. If we advance our pawns and those pawns are able to offer each other mutual support, as an instance, if we can advance these two pawns, let's say the bishop has to move back, and now we can advance the pawn and they're together. They can mutually support each other as they advance, hopefully with pieces behind them supporting them. So this is the theme. But this is strong mobile pawns, yes. However, without the support of other pawns, a single pawn can become very weak since the opponent is in a position to attack it effectively with his pieces. For instance, let's say this was the case. You have the isolated E pawn, you have the isolated C pawn, and you have the isolated A pawn. None of them can support each other, which means Silman, target consciousness, all three of those pawns are attackable, and that would be your strategy. I mean, right now, begin attacking the weaknesses. This is what Yusupov is getting to. The superior pawn structure, and he's got this in bold, he says the superior pawn structure is an important and long-term strategic advantage. In the long term, if you were set up this way, you would certainly coagulate all of your pieces toward the center and press those pawns. Yeah, that's important. There are many situations in which a pawn structure is to some extent damaged, and this gives us a hint. If there is a way that you can attack, even by sacrificing one of your own pawns, if there is a way you could attack these two pawns, and there is, you would want to. If nothing else, that might even be a preventative from letting the E pawn advance forward. But if you really did want to attack it, you could jump up there and attack it to weaken the pawn structure. Ideally, even, it would be even better if you had it like that. If you had it blockaded with a piece, and then you were able to attack that pawn, you could separate those two pawns that are together, and that creates a dynamic weakness, two weaknesses. the F pawn and the D pawn. You see the difference there. Now they can no longer march together through the board. This is the theme in this chapter. Frequently, it's simply impossible to hang on to the ideal compact structure, such as this quick example I showed you here. The pawn structure of the two sides can be evaluated rapidly by comparing the number of so-called pawn islands. And this is a cool concept. When I first ran into this concept, I thought, oh, it makes sense. Aha! I had never really paid much attention to my pawns, and that was one of my severe weaknesses. So let me set this up real quick, and we will go through a couple of really sweet examples that Yusupov shows us. Let's see, let me do the black side first. Here, and we've got the knight here, and another pawn there, and then there. So it looks like here, black is going to have a really nice pawn structure center. Got the king over here. He's already castled, and he has the rooks doubled, which is also very nice. This pawn has advanced to h4. I think I've got a knight here that's on the side, the queen here next to the knight. The king is back. The pawn is in front of the king. The rook is next on f and f5. Pawn, pawn, knight, knight, pawn, pawn, bishop. Okay, now the white. Now, white here has a dynamic space advantage, which is really kind of cool to see, too. And the way he affects this space advantage is one of the cool parts of this particular lesson that Yusupov put together for us, for which we are seriously very happy to see this. And okay, the king is way over here. The pawn is up. The pawn is there. The king, the bishop, and the queen. There is my queen, and we've got the queen, the rook. Okay, the pawn. Closing in on it, just about got it. This is such a fantastic idea, how Yusupov demonstrates what white does. Now you can see that in this instance, this board is not open. I mean, the center is just jam-packed with all kinds of pieces, right? So we want to find a way to exploit a weakness in either white or black structure. And the best way to do that, let me make sure I've got my knight with my queen in front of the king, rook and bishop. Bishop back on d8. That's a weird looking bishop, isn't it? Knight. Okay, so I think I've got this. Now, on the theme of pawn weaknesses, here we want to note, and I have a way of showing you in a good way. I'm going to turn this around. There's our weak pawn. That's our target, right? This is how we know, and the reason it's weak. One, it's blockaded. Nice. And it's blockaded by the best piece, the knight. So the knight still influences the entire area in the enemy camp. But with the blockade, that pawn can't move forward to be protected by his two buddies on either side. So that's the target. That's where we want to focus. We do see that it is attacked once by the knight, but it is also protected once by the black queen, right? Okay, so there's not going to be an exchange. You can't just take the pawn yet, but you can prepare it. The material is even, same number of pieces and pawns. White definitely has more space, which is important because he can maneuver his pieces better than black, and he has the stronger center. So how do we go about attacking this pawn? Watch this game. It's crazy. The entire strategy is that one pawn. Amazing. But it's the weakness. Black knows it. And this is the other interesting thing about chess, if you let your weakness be defeated, if you're taken, whatever, your whole position collapses. It's crazy. It's very interesting, the relationship there. So if you are aware of a weakness in your own camp and you see your opponent attacking your weakness, you have to protect it or your position collapses. And the way that white attacks is drops the knight back. This adds the rook attacking the pawn and the knight attacking the pawn. It's only protected once by the queen. So now the pawn will fall if black doesn't do something. And this is so cool how this works. This is by Kotov and Kopylov, 1951. And this was the USS Moscow Championship. So he doesn't attack the pawn directly. He moves a piece out, which attacks the pawn directly. Fascinating how that works. Well, the knight over here on the rim, you don't want to leave him there. Knight f7 is a nice way to support that pawn. Okay, so he's got it covered. Now, bring in your other rook, double up the rook on the file, which means you now have three pieces, both rooks and the knight attacking that pawn. He only has two pieces protecting that pawn. And now the bishop, way back here in a weird spot, can now come up to e7 and be extremely useful now as a defense piece, once again, covering the pawn. Everything focuses on this pawn, and the blockading knight was really nice, dropping him back. Now he can relocate him to hit that pawn once again. Fascinating, isn't it? And now the rook can come to d8, becoming more useful. Once again, protecting the weakness of the pawn. And now white can come to queen d2. Every single piece on both sides is after that pawn. One to take it away, the other one to keep it there. So black at this point has no other resources to protect the pawn. In the game, there followed a sacrifice born of despair. And here's what black did. He went knight to d4. Okay, that for the moment, temporarily, that really does block the file. This is the knight sacrifice. However, it doesn't work. The pawn, of course, white is in the position to accept sacrifices. Thank you very much. I will do that. And now the other pawn comes through. Notice the d pawn has not fallen yet. But watch the dynamics of how the exchange changes the center here. This is so neat how this happens. Now, the knight enters deep into the black territory. Very interesting move. Watch what happens. The other knight is going to come forward into the center. The d pawn has not yet fallen. Watch this. Knight will come back to e5. So this knight has actually made a complete loop-de-loop, and he comes back to blockading the pawn and hitting the bishop, which is a wicked fork of the king, the rook, and the queen. You want to watch those knights, yes? Be careful. You've got the queen, the rook, and the king. So this knight hopping in the center like this, because of the weak pawn, is extremely powerful, and you have to take good care. And let me make sure I did this right. Knight d5, yes, and now queen comes to f7, bumping out of the way. And now the queen comes back to e1. Now it's beginning to look like that they are abandoning the quest for that weak pawn. What they're doing is they're rearranging their pieces, which, again, will change the dynamic of how this works. And now he pushes the g5. And the rook will come over to b3, hitting another pawn, getting another target. The knight is going to take the pawn at c4, and the knight is going to take e7 check. So the bishop is eliminated, or exchanged, I should say, for the knight. The queen will take the knight, and now the knight will take g5. The change of the dynamics because of the way the pieces were coordinated based on attacking that weak pawn right there is exquisitely interesting. Knight comes to e3. Bishop is going to take the knight. D is going to take the bishop. The pawn will take the bishop. The queens are opposed to each other. The knight is going to come back here to e4 on a good central outpost. Now the d5 gets to move. Again, notice the two pawns are together, and if they can catch up with their pal here, that is a seriously powerful mobile pawn center. So the correct key is to push those pawns, and he does have the pieces behind him and across from him to support the movement of those pawns. So let's see how this works. Rook is going to take the pawn. It still leaves that dynamic d5 and the c5 pawn together, however. So D will now take e4, and now it breaks up the center. The two pawns together. But notice that there are 1, 2, 3, 4 pawn islands for the black pieces. There's only 1, 2 pawn islands for the white. That is the ideal. The less pawn islands, the better. Yeah. So the rook will take the e4, directly challenging the queen. The rook will take the rook on d1. The queen will go ahead and say, yes, let's do the exchange. Notice that white is a pawn ahead because of the dynamic weakness of that d5. He's gained a pawn, so he is happy to trade down. He wants to go into an end game with that extra pawn, and he will be able to bump the pawn in to win. Let's see if that is actually his strategy. It is. Rook comes to e5. Rook comes over to g4 check. He didn't exchange just yet. King will go to h8. Queen will come to d2, getting ready. Here comes the checkmate on h6. Yeah. So rook comes to e6 to cover the h6, and queen comes to c3 check. And at that point, black resigned. He got him. Kotov got him. So this is another really interesting. Hold on, let me make sure I've got this. I've got that example, that example. I want to use this one and that one. Okay, 2/6. Sorry, he's got these separated over several pages. I just want to make sure I get all of them. Okay, let me set up this next one here real quick. Black on. This will be fun to see how the dynamics of pawn weaknesses work once again, because that's the theme of this particular chapter. And the theme is to make sure you have less pawn islands than your opponent does, because pawn islands are a bad thing. A large number of pawn islands, I should say. It's better to have just 2 pawn islands than 3. That's what I'm trying to say in a rather clumsy way, but that's all good. I think I've just about got this. Hold on, I've got to pop a bishop in here. right there. Very good, very good. Rook down. Queen over on the 5. Pawn, pawn, pawn. He's got a good pawn chain here on ABC. He's got his other rook behind the A, rook on the D. The D part is a partial open. Pawn, 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 pawn. I just about got this. I think I've got this now. Oh, no. Hold on. Got it backwards. Got to put the king like so. Here we go. And the bishop here. So he is fianchettoed the bishop. There we go. And the other pawn up on E3. Okay, I think I've got this. Let me double check real quick. Good pawn chain here. Nope, there's no bishop there. The bishop here. The dark squared bishop's gone. King with the pawns. Okay, so in this particular example, let me see if it's Yusupov. I've got a Yusupov example. Yeah, this is Yusupov. I've got two Yusupov examples in this one because he's so good at exploring and explaining this particular theme of pawn weaknesses. It looks like, hey, Hubert, how you doing? Maltbite, too. Good to see you. Jeff Jordan, Borlord, good to see you guys. I like saying hi to everybody in the audience. Juserneam's been giving good comments, so stick around. We're all learning from Juserneam and the backyard professor with this illustration from Artur Yusupov's chess course. This particular game with Yusupov is really fun. Relatively open center, right? I always like to look at the center first just because that's the cream of the crop, as it were, and see, is it open? Is it closed? Is it dynamic? Is it passive? Who's got the better development? Who's got the better control, etc.? Well, the queen, true, the queen is on the side. Okay, I get that. You're not going to leave your queen there. However, she is in the black territory. So based on that, with the idea of the pawn in front of this queen, the white queen is more dynamic, which translates into being stronger somewhat. Okay, so the rook is on a partial open file. It's directly centered, and it's across from the queen. So this rook is more dynamic than this rook. Now, this rook does have a partial open file also, but he's hitting granite at this point. This rook has, it is granite, but it's across from the queen. So based on those ideas, both of this rook is protecting the B pawn because of this fantastic bishop. You always got to, it's probably one of the hardest parts of my game, man. Keep track of those fianchettoed bishops when they fianchetto over to here or here to B2 or likewise on the black. That long diagonal, man, that can just torture you if you're not careful. So it appears black's bishop is dynamically placed. Both bishops are really in a good position. Both kings are relatively covered. You do have dark square weaknesses around the black king because of the G pawn. This square and this square is weak, and this square is weak. So there is that consideration. Yusupov is playing the white pieces. Now, how he explores the weakness of the pawns, there is none right now. You've got one really wonderful pawn island, and you've got a second really wonderful pawn island. So technically speaking, there are no weaknesses. Silman, you've got one really nice pawn island. Now it is 3 versus 4 on the queen side. You do want to keep track of that. On this side, it's 3 versus 4 on the king side, favoring white. So the material is even. The pawn structures are even. So here's where Jeremy Silman in his materials say, if there are no weaknesses, create them. And this is what Yusupov does. He pounds the pawn in to create a weakness. And this is so interesting how this works. The queen will come to E7, and the pawn was pinned to the queen, you know. You can't just take that pawn. So now white, using that pin, the pin from the rook, white exploiting that pin rather than the black pawn taking and having, and actually if he was able to take that, he would have doubled pawns. But if he can move those, it's dynamic. They are definitely mobile. Yes, that pin, you step out of the pin, now you can create the weakness, attack the pawn. And that's what Yusupov does. And the C pawn takes the pawn. So with just a pin, using a simple pin tactic, we now have 1, 2, 3 pawn islands. And the isolated pawn is absolutely the target. No question. So now the game is going to revolve around this guy. Or at least it should. So I'll turn that so that we can keep our eye on him and see what happens. Now, Queen B6. And this is better for white, is what Yusupov is saying. One, he's going to blockade the queenside pawns. Now, the dynamic is the queen is in this play with potentially, in the endgame, pushing those, right? Yeah. So black has 3 pawn islands instead of 2, and his pawn on D6 is weak. So come up here, blockade the pawn, and attack the weakness twice. Notice the queen move does a double service, blockading the pawn, hitting the pawn twice. It's only protected once. So now black has to turn around whatever he was doing and begin protecting that pawn. And bishop E4 doesn't quite do it. And he has a question mark here. So queen to D4, notice how he's able to triangulate the movement of the queen, which is nice because he's still double attacking that weak pawn. And now he's keeping his eye on the bishop. Yeah. So, and it's a check. So he goes to G8. So a triple useful move for the queen, and it centralizes the queen. So it's a quadruple useful move for that queen. And now the bishop can take the bishop. Eliminate that central bishop. The queen can take the bishop because she is backed up by the rook on the partial open file. Yes. The queen can exchange the queen. Yes. And the rook can exchange the queen. Yes. And now the rook, the weak pawn, takes the weak pawn, and observe. 2 pawn islands, 2 pawn islands, 2 pawns, 2 pawns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Take it to the end game, ram a pawn in, and you got it. So the effect of a weak pawn, it may not be seen for, 8, 9, 10 moves, but it's definitely there so long as you are putting pressure on the opponent's weak pawn and never letting up. Because when the time comes that you can take that weakness, then it's there. You've got a target. The opponent has no targets, right? That's how that works. That is absolutely one of my favorite illustrations on this idea of a weak pawn. And Bonzia, the international master, the good little playing kid, the young kid, like he's only like 23 or so, he always talks about that in his games when he's playing through them. And he's playing and a couple of pieces of exchanged, and then a pawn or 2 is exchanged or lost, and he'll start counting and go, oh, hey, I'm up a pawn. Time to start trading off all the pieces and go and do an end game. That's exactly right. By focusing on the weakness, he gained that extra pawn. So, all right, I'm not trying to beat that horse to death, but that is a critical concept in this chapter. And I have another really cool Artur Yusupov example to show us, which is really fun. Yusupov, he puts several of his games into the exercises, and he gives you the partial exercise. And it's just so cool how he does it and shows you the theme. And I love how he does the theme with those. That's in front, that's in front. That is not a pawn, that is a rook. Let me make sure I'm getting this right. 3, knight, rook, rook, queen, right there next to the pawn. So this is going to look like it's a pretty compact, strong center in this game as well. Got a couple of pawns back here. Let's find the bishop, which is on B7. The rook is over here on the D. Got a central pair of pawns that are connected, which is nice given the outpost with the rook. We've got the black queen on H5, the 2 pawns in front of the king. So I think I've got it. Let me double check. Rook there. Okay, so in this game, once again, let me double check. I don't want to goof this up. Third row knight, rook, bishop, pawn, pawn, pawn. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I'm good. Bishop, queen. Okay, good. So in this example, Yusupov is, again, the white pieces, and he's trying to emphasize, he's going to show us that that's a pretty tight, compact, full center on a chessboard, right? Not a lot's going to come through there. So there's going to be some exchanging going on. There's going to be some fights, some left hooks, some uppercuts, etc. And there's going to be some pieces knocked out. It's not technically blocked, but it's not as powerful as it could be if he can get this pawn to move forward. That really adds that bishop power, that long bishop diagonal for his opponent, right? And he's got a real nice bishop looking at the H7, and his queen can also bump over with a queen bishop together if they want to, right? So let's take a look at what he does. Knight to D4. Centralize. In the endgame, he says, it is easier to exploit the opposing pawn weaknesses. He's got 1, 2, 3 different pawn islands. 3 groups of 2 pawns. Yusupov has 1, 2 pawn islands. So if you see your opponent with more pawn islands, attack one of those as a weakness. Yes? So queen is going to take E2. Notice he's offering the exchange of queens. Now, the 3 pawn islands versus the 2 of white, Yusupov is going to exploit as a weakness. One of the ways to exploit a weakness of your opponent, interestingly, is to exchange the queens. So he allows that. He actually ignites that by putting the knight there. So the queen will take the queen, and the rook will take the queen, not with the knight, but with the rook. And the rook will come back to F6. And now you've got the opportunity. Rooks are very, very good attacking pieces. They're the heavy pieces, especially when you can double them up on a file. It's a partial file, but it is a center file. So hit the knight with a rook doubling up, and he's aiming at this guy, the E6, because that's the weakness. In fact, let me illustrate that with you. There's the target. And again, 3 islands, and he's going to attack the center island, the weak pawn of the center island, the backward pawn, the behind the pawn. So this is really interesting, and he's going to try to correct that, right? I mean, there's no point in leaving the weakness. So go ahead and try to correct it. And the best way you can do that is advance that little guy. So he does this with the idea, and now knight to b3. He's going to come to a5. He's going to bump f3 to attack the center. His whole target, it's interesting that he's kind of moved his knight out of the way, or has he, in order to press the pawn forward so that he can remove the knight so that he can attack the pawn. Isn't that interesting? Again, a nice outpost, but not a permanent one. Get rid of the outpost, it'll open up this guy for the attack. That's the target. Sometimes you have to attack other pieces to get to that target, though. So this is really, and of course, black is going to try to distract you. Now, if you are seeing black, he started way back here, and you see him jump this, and now he's going here, and you're going, oh my, I've got to watch out. See, here he comes. He's attacking me. I have to respond. Now I'm going to have to protect my knight, etc. He simply drops his knight to c1. His knight is going to come back to d6, and now his rook is going to take e5, and the power is on white. Now white has the position that is going to be able to win. He's got the much stronger bishop. He's got the incredibly powerful e-file. Both of his rooks are doubled up and useful. That's a better game for white. All because of being able to recognize the backward pawn in the third island of the pawns is a target. And so you maneuver your pieces in every way you can to attack that target. That's target consciousness is how Silman put it. So I thought that was also a really nice illustration of Yusupov doing that. Use that. And I've got those. So, okay, let's go to the, and here. Yeah. Okay, here's what I did with the advanced book, with the master grandmaster part of the lessons. There is so much good information on how to coordinate a bishop with so many other pieces that I went ahead and I'm going to stay in this section, and I'm going to give you a couple of more examples of this, because some of us lesser players, don't we have issues with somehow finding a way to make the bishop strong? Our bishops just don't seem to reach their full potential, right? And so I love these lessons of Yusupov to kind of give us a way to say, okay, I could do this and put my bishop stronger in this game than it would have been normally. I love how Yusupov shows this, so let me set this up. This is really a great example here of that. And the pawn, knight, rook, pawn here. Pawn here. Is there a bishop? Yes, there is. And there is a pawn behind the bishop. The pawn is here. The pawn is here. Okay, whoops. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Oh, and the rook is here. Black rook is here. We got to keep the black rook happy. Black rook there. And the black rook there. And the bishop antagonizing. The pawn here. The pawn there. And the rook. And one more rook next to the king. The king. Oh, no, the king is off in the corner. So the rook is on the G. Rook on H with the queen. Gotta have the queen in on this. And I gotta have the black queen in on this. Just about there. I think I'm there. King pawn, rook, knight pawn queen, pawn bishop, rook down. Okay, and the two pawns. Oh no, there's not a knight there. Knife and out on this one. Bishop, bishop. Okay, I think I've got it. Okay, so with this theme, the question arises. No, we can see that it's kind of across the board. All the pieces. It's even in material. No, it's not. 1, 2, 3, 4. Black has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is this correct? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. White has to play powerful right now. He is behind, and black has a serious potential attack beginning to come up. His E file is open. Now he's got him guarded with the rook on the G at the point for now, but black has so many targets. And I agree he can lose an exchange. White can gain an exchange, but is that good enough just to take that rook is the question. The question is, how can white make use of his bishop on the long diagonal? Every one of your pieces, especially if you're behind in material, you have to have the more dynamic power play. You really have to put your pieces in the maximum area. How does he do this? He does this with a spectacular move. Any of you see what you should do? I'm going to let you look at that for a minute. I'll give you a hint. It's a sacrifice. What do you think? What would you do if you were white? Yeah, fun t-shirt, huh? I can explain it to you, but I can't understand it for you, yeah. Belaglovsky says, queen takes h7, close, but not quite. Very good eye, though. Anybody else? The idea is you're there, you're close, you got the right piece. See, that's what I thought too, Belaglovsky. So queen h6 is also a very interesting move, but that just exchanges a queen, right? Queen takes f7. And that is why we love chess. Because there is no way, come on, really? There is no way I saw that. I wouldn't have even seen that. This is the power of having Yusupov's chess lessons. This is absolutely beyond awesome. Obviously, it's a deflection. And that's why this becomes so powerful. You're a piece down, and you're going to sacrifice your queen. Right? No, I can't see that yet. I'll learn eventually. But what a deflection. What a deflection. Because now, rather than take the rook, which could be a temptation, right? Now you get to take the bishop. Check. Right? And this is so crazy because the queen goes to g7, and now you get to take the queen. Check. And that's where black resigned. Very cool, isn't it? Quite the move. So even if you're down material, you got to check all angles, all moves, everything you can. So that's quite the lesson. Yeah, right, S. Parker. Yeah, the masters, they're just geniuses, man. Yeah, right, malt bite. Maybe with 10 pounds of sugar. Here, hold on. I'm going to put your comment up there, right? That's me right there. Maybe with 10 pounds of sugar, I would have seen that in ultra hyper mode. Exactly. I mean, man, is that something else? Oh, Hubert says queen g5. Yeah, but good eye, though. But you're right. Yeah, it wasn't a forcing. And that's the other thing. And this is cool that you're thinking that way, you guys, because so much of Yusupov, well, I mean, all of the grandmasters, seriously, all of them, they really emphasize you got to make the forcing moves, even if it involves a sacrifice of your ultimate piece, the queen. If you can force the move and it deflects the queen away, then that username says queen g5 was winning also, but queen takes f7 is more forcing, so more convincing. Very good. Yeah. And, I can't quite think on that level. That's why it's so fun to study this stuff, right? Yeah. So, okay. Now I do believe, hang on. Yeah. Got another one. Good. Okay. Let me set this up real quick. Hold on. That the one I want to use? Yes, that is the one I want to use. Yeah, and this is another Yusupov. And I am getting biased toward Yusupov. I really am. He is just so dynamic of a teacher. And the other cool thing about Yusupov, really seriously, is he gets in such phenomenal positions in his chess games so that he can show you really exquisite tactics and moves and all that. I mean, they're just, Yusupov is a one-man wonder drug, man. He is just spectacular. So we've got the pawn chain coming up with the knight, and then the black queen up, and the pawn in front of the queen, pawn here, and bishop, and the rook next to the bishop. I do believe I've got the black set up right. Oh, and once again, the white, and this is Yusupov again. Look where he's got his knight, you guys. Yeah, that is so Yusupov. Yeah. So this is going to be a good one to watch, right? This is going to be cool to see. What are you doing, Artur? He's always doing something just incredibly dynamic, and I do believe that is what made him number 3 in the world for so long, is because he just played so he was able to play the forcing moves so well that people just couldn't play against him very easy. I do believe that's one of the things that made him so exquisitely powerful. Knight, pawn, queen below there. Does he have 2 knights here? He does. Knight below and the queen. Okay, I'm just about there. Thank you for your patience. What a night. Good night, sweet prince. Yeah. So I believe I got it set up correct. Both kings are covered, right? You're not going to have any weaknesses that way. Okay, so in this one, now this is Yusupov and Rustamov. Bastia, this was a rapid game 2004. And the center is pretty closed. Not a whole lot's going to go crashing through the center. There's no real open files that I can see. There's a partial on the C for black. Not a lot going on. Queen can't go to h5. The knight's in the way. I don't see any kind of an Alechem block. I don't see a losing an exchange with the rook taking a knight. Maybe the rook to h7. Wait. Not the rook takes h7. The bishop. Why not? Kapow. Black resigned. Black said, okay, well, that's good. Let's call it a day. And you go, okay, hold on. Let's look at this. Let's look at this for a minute. So if the knight takes h7, there's a checkmate real quick. Queen h5, and then you're in. So that's not the right approach, because you got the rook on h3, see? That rook on h3 is what makes this work. somewhere on the line, and I've said this in several videos, and I'm very sincere when I say this, when your opponent does a rook lift up to f3 or vice versa on the black, if he comes up to f6, he's putting his rook either on the G or the H file in front of his pawns. And that means he's going to utilize the queens and the bishops to go in there and sack stuff. You're going to sack the bishop. You're going to sacrifice the knight. You might even be able to sacrifice the rook. But once that rook gets here and over, you really have to pay attention, because there's going to be a sacrifice going on, right? But he can't even take it with the king, so it's got to be with the knight. So let's say that king goes to h8. This is cool. I wanted to play this through with you. Okay, so bishop then comes to g6. Now, come on, that's insolent. But watch. Isn't it remarkable? Now, this is an Alekhine block. That's what I was telling you a little earlier in the video. The Alekhine block can occur on the f6, the g6, or the h6. And the value of those Alekhine type blocks is because it really does goof up your ability to use your pawns as defensive players. And if you take it with the f pawn, you're in deep trouble too. So you can't do that. It's a check anyway. So you can't take the bishop because it's a discovered check. That's why the value was with the bishop, not the rook, because then the discovery. And now you go check. He just massacring him, man. So the rook will take the bishop. Still protected. Now, isn't this remarkable? The king, it's not like he's exposed. And yet you remember you did your rook lift and you're all the way over on the H file. Hot dog, put your rook to work. Let's go check. Sacrifice. Peace, sacrifice. It happens all the time like this. This is so interesting. So the king will take the rook. And now you've got knight takes f7. And you got the queen. So, yes, you sacrifice the rook, but it deflects the king. It's a forcing move. It deflects the king. He has to take that rook, and then you bop in there with the queen. Come on, man. That's great chess. That's the kind of chess I wish I could play all the time. So that's fun stuff. And see, you know, only as Yusupov can play it. The man was just crazy flipping good. One of my favorite chess teachers, without question, man. Yusupov rocks. Let me mark this is done and that's done. So, all right, we're just at an hour, and I've given you a few ideas from the beginner, the intermediate, and the advanced. And this has been a lot of fun for me because these examples are just so fun. He does pick excellent examples in his chess course. There's no question about it. And by some of the world's greatest players. But for whatever reason, I'm finding as I'm trying to find which stuff I'm going to show you guys on my Saturday morning lives, the Yusupov examples just come out to be more, I'm not going to say bizarre or crazy, but maybe more forceful. They're just so entertaining and instructive that I can't help it. I love putting up your Artur Yusupov's examples. So, all right, you guys, I'm going to, yeah, cool. Hey, Hubert. Hey, Twin Turbo Harry. Henry. Good to see you too. So, yeah, a lot of fun. Let's go have a good Saturday today. I'm going to head out. It's going to be very, very warm today, so I've got to go get some watering done, and then I'll play some more chess again a little later tonight. And don't forget, every Saturday morning, 10 o'clock, We're going to have BYP Live showing some Artur Yusupov chess. Go tell your friends and family. Hit the like button and the subscribe. That helps me with the algorithm, as all the other guys say too, but it is true. And appreciate all your support. Appreciate all your love. Appreciate all your comments and participation. This is just a lot of fun for me. I hope it's enjoyable for you. And let me know in the comments. Please leave comments in the video. That also helps the algorithm. I know a lot of people watch the live, but they won't say anything about it. Please say something in the comments if you would be so kind. You know, it's like I'm begging for money. I'm begging for comments. Please make comments. I'm begging for the like button, you know. So many other guys are begging for money. I'm begging for comments and likes. Hey, throw money my way too if you want, but comments and likes. So have fun, you guys. You're awesome. We will catch up to you. I'm going to try to make more chess videos during the week also. So I like to find games that kind of illustrate, you know, what I talk about on these live sessions. That always makes it a lot of fun too. So anyway, oh, nice. Yeah, at least 25 likes. And you guys go have a great weekend. That's a direct order. The BYP commands you to have a great weekend simply because you're all so doggone awesome. I am very grateful and blessed to have you as friends and be in your presence. So see you sometime during the week with other videos, and next week for more Artur Yusupov. Have a great day, you guys. Thanks for showing up. Appreciate it.